What up? What's up, AP World? We're back. I'm super stoked for tonight's stream because we're talking about global movements and we've reached the very last key concept. Tonight we're talking about 6.3. So if you can hear me and you can see me and you're super stoked about what we're about to do tonight, hit me up with one word on how you're feeling right now in the chat. Give me any word or an emoji if you're feeling like not, words are not going to describe you and you want to actually just like use an emoji to describe you. There are way more of you in the chat that are in this stream than are like talking in this chat. So let's get you guys like posting something, any word that describes how you're feeling right now, however that may be. We have a few sad criers. Yikes. Communism. That's an interesting feeling. So let's see what we got. I'm gonna push you guys to really like give me all you got. I mean, I know that we're tired. I know everyone's super busy. I am too. We all are. But we made it. We're here. We're in mid-April. It's tax day. And like we got a few more weeks of this. And just think like this is not forever. How stressed you're feeling right now is not forever. There is an end date on this. So if you can give it all you've got for the next month, right? We got like 30 something days till AP World. Give it everything you've got. You're going to be really thankful that you did that. So we added something new on the watch page for tonight's stream. I'm really curious to see how this goes. Last time I gave out the slides and I said, I'm going to give you the slides, but I want you to bring a friend. So this time we put up a little button. If you refresh the page, if you can't see it right now, just refresh it and it'll show up. There's a little button right above my stream that says that you can tweet out something for us. Tweet out to your friends that we're here and we're doing this. And then once you do that, a little thing will pop up that says that you can download the slide. So we're going to try this out. I'm really curious. Ultimately, like I'm trying to get in front of as many AP World students as I can because what we're doing here has been really useful. Like last year, we had over 90% of our students pass AP World. And that's just because we're talking about it, we're practicing, we're reviewing. And so I want to get this out to more students and more teachers so that they know what we're doing. Because what I hear more than anything is, why didn't I know about Fiveable earlier? So help us out, tweet it out, and then you can get the slides. No problem. Okay, all right, we're going to jump in. Where did my slides go? So just to give you guys a little sense of where we're at, like I said, we're going to talk about 6.3 tonight, the very last key concept. I'm curious, and let me know this in the chat, where are you at right now in the content? I don't want to know chapter number. I want to know like specific content of where you're at. What are you studying right now? And that'll be really useful. Yes, Fiveable Plus members always get access to the slides. Sometimes we don't post them the night like before the stream. So it may not be up there right now, but if Tan is watching, hopefully he can post the slides up there so you can get them. So curious of where you guys are at in your class, what you're studying right now. We've got Rise and Fall of Communism, European Colonization, state testing, so we don't even have WHAP this week. Feminism and global movements, Cold War, technology. Awesome. Okay, sweet. So hopefully you're in Unit 6. If you're not and you're feeling the heat, I highly recommend, getting a prep book, getting Fiveable Plus, something to start. You got to go back and start reviewing, and you're going to need to like go a little bit faster at this point. So that's just like my recommendation. I'm not sure where your spring breaks are, but you should be finishing up Unit 6 within the next week or two, right? So now's the time to we got to move a little faster so that you've got some time to review, because that review time is going to be really crucial. All right, I'm sharing my screen now. Let's go, let's do this. I'm so stoked. I really love Key Concept 6.3. And I wish that it showed up in more of the exam, to be honest. But who knows? Who knows what you're going to get this year? Everybody's got, Everyone's got guesses, but nobody knows. So just to give you guys a quick sense, if you have never been on a Fiveable live stream before, the chat is really for you guys. Talk to each other, help each other, give each other, resources, whatever you need. I'm watching the chat, but sometimes I'm also just teaching, and so I'll miss something that goes by. But the ask a question area, that's for you to tell me that you have a question. So I will be answering questions all throughout, definitely at the end, and post whatever you got. Now is the time where if you got a question about really any part of the course, hit me with them. This key concept is definitely shorter, so like this shouldn't be too long. And then I'm happy to stick around and answer questions. So just make sure that you post them. Like, give me your questions. Give me the question, though. Any questions you've been like holding on to that you don't want to ask in class. I don't know. Like, maybe you're just like, you just never actually like put it out there. Now's the time. Get those questions answered. Okay, so global movements. Shameless plug, if you're not following us on social media, you should be, especially AP World students on YouTube. I have so many helpful videos. I have a video for every single key concept. That is like, I'm telling you, man, these are like where it's at. You got to go watch those. And then on Twitter, on Instagram, we're going to be posting all kinds of giveaways in the next few weeks. Really just like ramping up, our mobile app is so close. It's like we're about ready to drop this. And then Apple was just like, not ready. And so it's coming, it's ready, it's going to be posted any day now. And so we'll announce that on social media. And we're going to be playing some huge trivia games in May, the week of the exam. So hit us up. Okay, so like period 6 is 3 key concepts. You have science and technology, which some of you guys said you're studying right now. That would have been like green revolution, medicine, weapons, all the different, technology that advanced. Key concept 6.2 is sort of this umbrella key concept. It's pretty massive because it's like all the world wars, the Cold War, all the conflicts that happened in the 20th century. But 6.3 is a lot more about globalization and with an emphasis on economics, but also just like social and cultural movements, right? So there's a lot that happens in the world in the 20th century that, unlike in the past, it really does happen everywhere. Right? So even when you're studying United States history in the 20th century, the things that happened here were not unique to the US. In fact, these were very much global movements, whether it was civil rights or feminism or human rights or environmental rights, all these different movements that happened in the 20th century were not unique to one place. They really did happen everywhere. And this is something that's kind of special about the 20th century. This is the first time that you really see really mass movements like this. And so what we're going to do tonight is kind of go through the different, just kind of cutting through the different movements, the different people, some of the examples. And this is really all pictures, which is kind of cool. But I have examples listed throughout as well. Okay. First, let's just talk about communism as a movement. Communism itself starts in the 19th century, but it really starts spreading in the 20th century. I talked a lot about specifics of communism, what that looked like in the Soviet Union and in China during the Cold War session that I did 2 weeks ago. That replay is up and posted in Fiveable Plus. We went through the whole Cold War from beginning to end, all the things you had to know. But it's part of this key concept because when you look at it as not like the Cold War, but actually just like an economic movement, right? It's an approach to economics that is global, right? We see it in the Soviet Union, in China, in Cuba, in North Korea. We see, pieces of it in other places. And so really it's about like this idea around collectivization and around these 5-year plans that were meant to, push the economy forward through agriculture, right? And so these communist movements were, I don't know how successful you would call it, right? So in China, you have millions and millions of people die because of the 5-year plan. That would be the great leap forward. In the Soviet Union, same thing. You know, kind of brutal, but I guess there's like learnings there. You know, it is what it is. So in terms of like the actual AP World exam, what do you need to know about communism? I highly recommend that you just like really understand what communism is, and then also what it looked like in these, especially Soviet Union and China. And for that, I would definitely suggest heading back to the stream I did 2 weeks ago. Those are some good slides for that. On the flip side, all right, so there's a couple questions here actually. Let me add this and then go back. Shoot. Oh yeah, we started a student Discord. Hit us up there for extra study help. So this question here is around, I just added it. What's the difference between the Great Leap Forward and the 5-year plan? They're the same thing. So the Great Leap Forward is China's 5-year plan. In the Soviet Union, it's just called the 5-year plan. The tricky part is in China, the 5-year plan only lasted for 3 years. You know, super unsuccessful, massive droughts, massive famine, like millions of people died because of this. So, yeah, not a good time. Okay, this question here, how do we access previous slides from other periods? Everything is up in our web app. So you can head to http://app.fiveable.me. And if you're a plus member, you can see all of the slides in there. But some of them I think are available outside of it, especially in the study skills section. Okay. All right, so on the flip side, right, so of course, in the Cold War, you have communism versus capitalism. But like capitalist economic policy is a global movement in the 20th century. You know, actually, I only have American examples here, which is not very AP World of me. But the idea of like liberalism and free market policies do extend beyond the United States, right? So of course you have the New Deal with FDR, which is worth noting even in world history, right? This is really, it's not the first time, but it's maybe the most expansive, policies at play that really encompass sort of the like welfare state, right? So this is the idea of like the government supporting people, whether that's through, you know, finding jobs or getting, you know, Social Security benefits, getting Medicare, actually those things come a little bit later, but just really like supplementing what people need through government support. Right, so Germany is really the first country to do this in the 19th century. But these ideas, this social democracy, is going to expand, right? And so, you know, FDR's New Deal is a big piece of that pushes those things forward. Then the ideas of free market policies with Reagan, with Margaret Thatcher, which we're actually going to do a whole stream on Margaret Thatcher for AP Euro on Wednesday night. And so basically what you get is just ideas around leaving the market alone, right? Like maybe the government shouldn't have any part in what happens. But these are all capitalist responses, right? These are capitalist economic policies that will shape what the United States looks like, what Western Europe looks like, and what all those other allies and or colonies of those places will look like. This is very much in response to, you know, communist movements. It's sort of the opposite. And I'm distracted because if you look at this picture, it's just a lot of white dudes just watching him sign that. Oh, times have changed, but at the same time, maybe not. Let's see. All right, other movements, international politics. Because of the world wars, there was a need in the 20th century for international political cooperation, right? We first are going to see this after World War I with the League of Nations, which, as you remember, is not successful. It's not strong enough, right? It doesn't have enough strength to prevent World War II, right? So it's not able to stop the, expansionist policies of Japan or Germany. So the League of Nations is not successful, but it does set the tone for what an international political organization could look like. And so the United Nations is the kind of 2.0, right? So it's going to take a lot of the learnings from the League of Nations of, we need to get together. We need to have, all the countries in the world in a space where we can be diplomatic, where we don't have to go to war. We can figure things out before that. Where we can tend to issues that arise, where we can send need in the places that require it, whether there's drought or famine or natural disasters. And so the United Nations is formed in 1945 and is still very much strong and out there today. And then the last one would be like the International Criminal Court. So after World War II, this idea of like, okay, the Nazis committed these atrocities. What do we do about it? Who is in charge of, reprimanding the Nazis? Who gets to say where can we put them on trial? How do we set up some justice, some due process to take care of this? So the International Criminal Court does that. Right, this is not overseen by one country. It's overseen by many, and so it's how we, apply the same rules of like due process to an international criminal. All right. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, all right. So okay, so you can kind of see where this is going, right? Where we're looking at like just things in the 20th century that existed across boundaries, across countries, across even continents that connected people across the world through larger movements. So international politics. Another example would be international economics. And again, this is after World War II, where the war itself was so devastating. And it's like you had the Great Depression, okay? You had the Great Depression in the 20s. Into the 30s, things got really bad in a lot of places. And part of this is because the economies of the world were so interconnected. And so when you had the stock market crash in the United States, that sent other economies into a spiral. And so, then you then kind of just go right into World War II. And so it's not till after World War II that it's sort of like, okay, how do we prevent that from ever happening again? How do we prevent such incredible hyperinflation that happened in Germany? How do we prevent things like banks just like shutting down and money disappearing because of a lack of control over that? And so these are a few of the organizations that appeared in that aftermath: the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, and the World Trade Organization. Straight up for AP World, you don't need to be able to fully explain what each of these things do. I can barely fully explain what each of these things do, but you should know that there are international economic organizations, and that these are exactly that. That's just kind of how it goes. So, all right. So in addition to, needing to clean up politics and economics after World War II, we also had a humanitarian crisis like never before, right? You had, first of all, just the wars themselves required organizations like the Red Cross to provide medical supplies, food, blankets, all those different necessary items. Then you also have a need for like larger all the different refugees that are going to be moving around, the children that now don't have parents or a home or things, items that they need. And so some of the organizations like Red Cross started in the 19th century, but UNICEF, Amnesty International, World Health Organization, right? The World Health Organization gathers so much data around, antibiotics and medicines and vaccines and like diseases and what diseases have been eradicated, and actually having all that data together really brings sort of like the medical community in the world together, right? So just like we're sharing knowledge across politics and economics, we're doing the same thing in medicine. All right, let me check out some questions. Let me just see if, oops, I should have stopped answering that earlier. That's okay. Okay, so I will go back. Some of these are from different. All right, so you keep dropping your questions, whether they have to do with this topic or not. No worries. You can. I'll go through and answer those at the end. Like I said, this is definitely a shorter stream. This key concept isn't like all that in depth, but there's a bunch more. So we've got 8 more slides. Okay, so regional trade agreements. It's pretty incredible how much things come back around, how relevant some topics can be. Regional trade agreements are in the news all over today. And you have things like the European Union, which would be more of like an economic agreement and political to in some capacity. The European Union really unites most of Europe within a lot of aspects. Within it basically like allows you to travel across borders very easily. It allows you to work in other places, to go to school in other places very easily. You have the euro for the currency that not every EU member uses, right? Like the UK still uses the pound, but it unites this whole space under a lot of the same agreements. And then, of course, we have Brexit right now, which is the movement for the UK to leave the European Union. And if you think that politics in the United States is confusing and frustrating, it's definitely more, if not, it's definitely more confusing in Europe, but in the UK. But this whole idea of Brexit has just been back and forth and back. I've been trying to keep up with it, and I don't even really know where they're at. I know that they're not leaving, but I'm not sure where that's going now. That would be a great question to ask Tom Ritchie at any one of those streams that he'll run. And then, of course, you have NAFTA, right? So NAFTA would be the North American Free Trade Agreement, which is also in the news, right? This is very much part of what is happening in our politics of trying to sort of pull away from these global things out of fear of, what happens if borders are not seen as strong, or, if the trade agreement is not equal. Again, you don't need to be able to explain every single one of these agreements in any sort of depth on AP World. Just know what they are and know them, especially as evidence points, to be able to drop in evidence points when you can. If you get an essay that's about globalization of any of these topics, this is perfect. Multinational corporations, you definitely see multinational corporations in the 19th century, with like, well, now I can't think of one. Maybe, I guess this really starts in the 20th century. Companies that totally transcend borders, right? That like any of these, there's tons of companies that aren't even on this that would work, right? Every type of social media, some of these big brands for, food, for what else is on here? Coca-Cola, Nike, IKEA, these brands that just go well beyond what was maybe seen as what a corporation could be, right? These are multinational. Some of these questions around like, do I need to know Brexit for the exam? You do not need to know Brexit. So the AP World exam so Unit 6 technically is 1900 to the present, but you're not going to get asked about anything for sure beyond 9/11. I honestly can't imagine even the 90s coming up on the exam. It's kind of end of Cold War because we don't really know. We're not really able to like analyze too much beyond that, sort of the end of an era, and we're in the next piece of it. So we don't really know what that's going to look like in terms of like a historical lens. So you won't need to know about Brexit. You may be able to use it as an example of something, as like a synthesis, but you don't need to know it. Don't spend your time learning it now. Okay, environmental movements. So as an effect of the science and technology of this time period, this is why you have environmental movements. Part of it is we harmed our environment more in the 20th century than ever before because of technologies, right? Because of mass transportation, cars, planes, trains, because of just more movements of people, because of nuclear power. And then the other part is that we actually have more science in the 20th century to really understand our planet and understand the harm that we're doing to it. And so there were environmental movements far before this, but starting in the 60s, you really start to see with like Rachel Carson, just like people stepping out and saying like, we have to be mindful of what we're doing to the environment. We can't just, dump things in lakes and oceans. We can't just, let the pollution in the air just go on forever. We need to set standards. We need to set limits on what we're doing in order to protect the environment. And so movements like Greenpeace, like Earth Day, like today we see like the Green New Deal, you see the Sunrise Movement. There's tons of different environmental organizations today, and it's all sort of just like as a result, right? Like we've gotten worse, right? Like if you think about like CO2 or climate change, like we've gotten way worse over time. Like the earth is way worse off today than it was 20, 30, 40 years ago. But we also just know more. We understand a lot more about just the environment and what we've done. And how to potentially prevent things from happening. And so, this is, I would say, when you think about what a Unit 7 could look like, we don't know. Obviously, we have no idea. The last 20 years have been pretty fascinating in the post 9/11 time of, this like rise of nationalism across the world, totally global movement. But then beyond that, it's possible that Unit 7 is really going to be marked by climate change, right? By environmental movements and by just like what we're doing to the earth. Totally possible. I can't wait to see what that would look like. What was Greenpeace again? Greenpeace is just an environmental group that supports saving the environment. So they do all kinds of like protests and other ways that they are trying to like and this is a picture of them. This is what is it? Stop EPR, some sort of nuclear waste, right? So it's almost like a guerrilla protest, like them wearing this. They're making a statement. Okay, racial equality. So what's fascinating, I think, about just this entire key concept is just truly how global these things were. In the 20th century, you have several different movements for racial equality. You have apartheid. Okay, this is in South Africa. Apartheid limited the access of opportunity to any Black citizen in South Africa. And so essentially what you had is you had a white minority government that was fearful that if there were, equal education, voting rights, anything, that the white community would then be like taken over, right? Could then be in danger. And so that led to these apartheid policies that separated, segregated, dehumanized, limited education, limited job opportunities. Like you can see here, non-Europeans, Europeans, right? It's so similar to what you imagine the civil rights movement. It's like colored whites. It's the same thing, right? So this is happening in South Africa from the 30s, 40s, all the way up until the early 90s when apartheid was finally ended. Civil rights movement, of course, in the 60s, in the 50s and 60s, you have, Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and Rosa Parks and all of the like classic civil rights leaders really pushing for change and pushing for equality and changing policy in a lot of ways. You have the, Civil Rights Act, you have the Voting Rights Act, you have running out of education acts, all kinds of different like pieces that are really going to open up more opportunity. One thing I think to just always keep in mind, civil rights movement did not fix everything. Just because apartheid rules are gone does not mean that racism is over. It's very much still alive and well in any of the countries that have had to face what racism looked like in their country. So, we see that today. It's part of the process. We got to keep going. We got to keep pushing forward. End White Aussie is the same thing where like the white people in Australia had more rights than the native people. And so this was the same thing, this push to like, why, right? Like, let's make things more equal. Happening everywhere, almost at the same time. Even today, like Black Lives Matter isn't just a movement in the US. It's really a movement in a lot of other places too that are using the same umbrella, right? It's like it's the same frustrations, it's the same, it's all like same thing, different place, right? I think a lot of people have just been experiencing the same things. Feminism. Yeah, I'm gonna delete this. Sorry. I'm happy to talk to you about Black Lives Matter, but boot. Bye. Yeah, look, like we're gonna talk about we're gonna talk about things that are gonna be difficult, and I'm happy to answer questions, but what I'm not gonna be doing is allowing for broad statements to be made that are not correct. So this one is gonna go to, yeah, we're not gonna do this. Sorry, y'all. Ask me questions if you want. We can have tough conversations, but yeah, we're not gonna do that, not tonight. Okay, so in terms of feminism, you've got, again, a global movement around women's rights. You have women's suffrage that will appear at the beginning of the century and just sort of like spiral out and spread out through other people. And let's see. Oh, this is a good question. Okay, so you have organizations like NOW, which would be like the National Organization for Women. You have feminist leaders like Betty Friedan, Angela Davis. I'm only naming American people. I can't think of like some of the other people that come up in this time. One person asked, could the Me Too movement be considered part of this? I think I want to say like yes and no. I think that the Me Too movement is sort of a third wave. Okay, so what you have in terms of a history of feminism, you have the first wave of feminism, which would have been suffrage, that would have started in the 17th, 18th, 19th centuries, that then lead to actually gaining the right to vote, mostly in the 20th century. Then you have the second wave of feminism, which would be in the 60s. This is like gaining more rights in the workplace, in relationships, in like the right to have an abortion, the right to get a credit card, the right to sign your own loans, all these different things. The right to be on a jury, that was like kind of recent. The right to be on a jury, like I think it was the 70s or 80s, which is crazy. And so the Me Too movement and what's happening right now with like the Women's March and all the different like, women empowerment movements, I would say is a lot more about the third wave of feminism, right? This is just like another wave. This is another generation. These are like women who, we have the right to vote. We have a lot of rights to now go to college, to go to get jobs that are equal to, men, and to be more independent. And now is more about what does it look like in those spaces, right? Now is a lot more about making sure that those rights are secured. And I think this is just a totally new wave of feminism. So you won't be asked about like Me Too, but you'll definitely be asked about feminism. And you definitely see too like feminist movements as a result of like within like communist movements. There was a whole DBQ once about feminism within communist countries that was around, you have basically communist countries that would have claimed that things were more equal, that it's better than in capitalist countries. And then you have, women in those countries that are like, not so much, right? We still are not paid equally. We are still not given the same rights to do X, Y, and Z. This question is second wave Western feminism was about the sexual revolution, birth control, and generally more freedom for women, right? Yep, that's pretty much it, right? Freedom from freedom in the workplace, freedom in education, freedom, for your own body. That's pretty much the second wave. The first wave is voting and like kind of those like basic rights. The third wave is a little bit more like nuanced. It's more about like now that we have these opportunities, what does it look like within that? This question of, do you think feminism will dissolve if everyone becomes equal? No, because feminism is not an end goal, right? Feminism is the idea that women have rights just like men, and has a place no matter what because of the history of women, right? To have a whole history of oppression doesn't mean that if equality is achieved, that feminism would go away, right? I don't think that it would be replaced by anything. I think people galvanize when they don't have rights, when they are oppressed, and we're going to rally around an idea louder when without the rights than if you have them. But just the basic idea of feminism is also just like a way to live, right? It's just like how we treat people and how we like what we support. I don't think there is sort of an end goal in that. I think it's an intention of like how we live. That's my definition of it. Okay. All right, fundamentalism. All right, we're talking about some heavy topics tonight, y'all. This stuff is no joke. I know, we're really we're getting into it. Fundamentalism, religious fundamentalism in the 20th century is a pretty fascinating study, right? So I only have 2 examples of this, but you are going to see fundamentalists in a lot of other religions as well. But I want to point out 2. One would be like Christian fundamentalism. Basically fundamentalism is almost like an extremist approach to a certain religion, where you read into the text, the doctrines of that religion very literally, and then adapt those into politics, into economics, into social and cultural norms. And when you do that in an extremist way, that's when there is, problems, when there could be violence, danger, different things. So 2 examples just in the 20th century. There are plenty more. One would be Christian fundamentalists, where you have this anti-evolution movement. You'll learn about this more in APUSH, but you have, just this push to not teach evolution, right? It goes against the literal interpretation of the Christian doctrine. And so that is one fundamentalist movement. Another one would be Islamic fundamentalism, where you're going to see this in a huge scale would be the Iranian Revolution. This is where Iran was a very democratic society where women had a lot of rights, could wear whatever clothes they wanted, could go to school, could really have any of the same opportunities that we would maybe see in the Western world. And then in 1979, this is when the Shah of Iran is overthrown and replaced by Ayatollah Khomeini and a whole community of people behind him that supported this theocracy, right? So Iran today is a theocracy. It is more governed by this strong religious belief, right? This fundamentalist belief, and that can be very, very dangerous for many, right? Especially people who can be marginalized according to those texts, specifically women, right? So this is something that we are going to see in the 20th century. We'll see Islamic fundamentalism again in Iraq, towards the end of the century, with different terrorist groups that will appear. I think ultimately, terrorism does play a role in the 20th century. You do have, the terrorist organizations in Northern Ireland, in, ISIS, Al Qaeda, what's the other one? There's one in Spain that was sort of I can't remember what it's called. They were sort of the Basque region, trying to get the independence there. And so you have terrorism play a role in the 20th century, but I think it would be a bigger part of the 21st century story, right? So it's not going to be a big part of AP World. But this guy, so some of your questions, this is Ayatollah Khomeini, who was the leader of Iran after the Iranian Revolution. So if you ever watched the movie Argo by, I think Ben Affleck directed and produced it, and he's in it, the first few minutes, if you just look this up, the very first few minutes of Argo, I think do a pretty good job of kind of showing what this scene may have sounded like, may have felt like. I mean, it's definitely showing it to you from an American approach. And so, take that with a grain of salt. It's not showing you the perspective of, one of these people, but it's kind of fascinating to just sort of hear that overthrow, hear that demonstration, what that sounded like. His name is Ayatollah Khomeini. Ayatollah Khomeini. I think that's how it's spelled. Super interesting. Interesting. All right. Okay, so this is pretty much the last slide. All right, another, like the last piece that we'll talk about is just like global pop culture. You know, and today with social media, we all obviously understand global pop culture. Like just this past weekend, what is it? BTS, the Korean K-pop group, was just on Saturday Night Live, you know, sort of like making that crossover jump. So, you know, we understand global pop culture. Last night, Game of Thrones, like talk about global pop culture. Everyone in the world was watching Game of Thrones last night, or at least knew that it existed, right? Like knew that it was on last night. Global pop culture. You don't have this in the 19th century, not at this scale. You know, this takes a level of communication and transportation that we only have now because of our technology. And so some examples of global pop culture that have actually appeared on the exam would be like Bob Marley and reggae, right? This like movement around music, Bollywood, like very clear connections to, you know, Hollywood, the Olympics. So two examples of how they have used this exact topic on the exam. We've literally seen two DBQs connected to global pop culture. One of them was the Olympics. That DBQ was in 2008, and it was literally a DBQ about the modern Olympics and how that shaped social, political, and economic trends. We've also seen a DBQ about cricket, the sport cricket, which is listed in this key concept, where cricket is again, was the DBQ was basically like comparing cricket to using it in the context of like Muslim nationalism. I forget what the question was. I think it was 2012. So you can go back and read that DBQ. But it's pretty fascinating that, like, I think, you know, you think of AP World History, you don't think of this little tiny part of this last key concept, but literally two DBQs have been on this. And so I think, you know, just to sort of end it, it's like the DBQ could literally be on anything. Do not be surprised when it seems like a really random question, because it probably will. You know, last year's questions was awesome about trains. It really was about more than just trains, and everyone freaked out about it. But don't be surprised if you look at the DBQ and you're like, what the heck? I studied for so long, and now I'm going to be asked this tiny little thing about cricket, you know? But it's really asking you to make some analysis on some larger patterns. Like, that's the point of the DBQ. The DBQ, they're giving you the documents, so you don't have to know the content. You need to know the larger, you know, context of that content. But it can literally be on anything. Like one year it was about the flu that spread after World War I. It wasn't about World War I, it was about the flu after World War I. And everyone was like, come on, I didn't teach this, I didn't study this. And yeah, I mean, it's not like, right, Spanish flu. So you can really get it on anything. Yeah, cricket, not the phone line, cricket, the sport. It's kind of like baseball with like a paddle. It's played in mostly Southeast Asia. That's like where it's the most popular. And in India and Southeast Asia. All right. All right, y'all. We made it through all the content in AP World History. Can I get a whoop whoop? Give me some cheers in the chat for the last thing. Whoop whoop. That's it, you know? That's the whole thing. That's the ball game. Mic drop. So let me go through and answer some of your questions. Man, these questions are going to be, all right. I'm going to do my best to pick and choose. Some of them I'm not going to totally answer because you don't need to know them. All right. So to give you a quick sense, I'm going to answer some questions right now. In the next 3 weeks, we're going to be doing review for each unit. So next week is unit 1 and 2. The week after would be unit 3 and 4. And then the week after that is 5 and 6. Okay, so those 3 streams are 3 of the last streams that we're going to be doing for free. These live streams that we do for free. Then between myself and Patrick Lassiter and Ben Freeman, of Freemanpedia, and some other so amazing AP World teachers, we're going to be streaming every single night of the AP exam, and most of that is going to be just for Fiveable Plus members. So you are not going to want to miss that. That's where all the good stuff happens in that last week. That's when we're hitting you with those last minute, answers to your questions. That's where we're giving you those last minute tips and strategies. And so that last week is going to be for Fiveable Plus members. We are going to do a huge trivia game that will be a whole big thing that everyone can play as soon as our app drops, which is going to be soon. Hopefully tomorrow, if we can do it. We're just waiting on Apple to let it post. So we're super excited for that. But if you have an Android, you can find the Fiveable app on Android already. So that's fun. Is there any way to watch old streams? Yes. Jillian just threw her code in there, and you guys can all get codes too, and you can share this with other people. So you can sign up for Fiveable Plus. Every single stream for every subject is up with the slides, with other resources posted, with trivia games attached. And in the next 2 weeks, we're going to be adding a ton more stuff, another 200 trivia questions that we'll post, other resources, other study guides that I have, just basically everything I have for AP World, I'm going to be posting. And so you can get, we have codes that if you just go to app.fiveable.me, everyone can get their own Fiveable Plus code, and it's basically give $5, get $5. So if somebody uses your code and signs up for Fiveable Plus, they will save $5 and you will earn $5. And so there's no limit on that. You can go wild sharing it at your school, and you can earn your money back pretty quickly. For Fiveable Plus, do you pay once and that's it, or is it every year? It's every year, so it's $30 a year, which is insanely cheap for the amount of content you are getting. I mean, this is top-notch content from, $35, and then if you use one of these codes, then it's $30. So it's $35 and $30 if you use one of the codes that other students are sharing. And so the $35 will cover you for this school year, and then you'll need to re-up for next year if you want to get the subscription again. And we'll probably do a deal right after AP exam, so you can sign up for next year right away and have it all ready to go. Other questions about Fiveable Plus? I'm going to answer some of these other questions too. Okay, so post any questions you've got, and I'm going to go through. And what labor specialization was there in ancient Persia? I mean, there was, at that point, Persia is just like every other society, but you don't need to know the specifics. So skip it, right? It's your basic structure. You got the wealthy at the top, you've got the poor at the bottom. That's about it. Basic labor specialization. Will there be enough information in this podcast for a quiz tomorrow? Well, let's see. Was that you, Joe, that wanted me to shout out your AP teacher, Miss Berkey? Miss Berkey might give you a quiz tomorrow. There's definitely enough information. This is 6.3, so be ready. I don't know what she's going to ask, but be ready. How often is period 6 DBQ or LEQ on the exam? Okay, yeah, so, you know, in order, the math around what's going to be asked is, it's tough. So there's, you know, 50% chance of the period 6 LEQ being on the test and a 25% chance of it being on the DBQ. Cool. So, I mean, it could be anything, okay? So, I mean, they give you the structure, right? So it's, you know, the DBQ is units 3 through 6. So you could see any of that. Last year, the DBQ was unit 5. The year before that was, I think, unit 6. And right, yeah, and with the LEQ, you have a choice. So even though you're gonna have, there will be a question from either period 5 or 6 on the exam for the LEQ, you don't have to choose it. You could choose a different one. So definitely don't skip period 6. It's a good one. There's tons of stuff to ask. Can you please explain feudalism and the tribute system? Man, you guys are like, I feel like I'm being quizzed. Feudalism would be your like medieval economic structure, right? So you have your, you know, basically everyone's sort of tied to the land. So you have on the top of that, you have, what would be the top, like lords. I don't know what the very top of feudal structure would be, but then the very bottom you have kings, a king, nobles, right? So you have this whole structure of people. It's all tied to the land, right? So you really don't, I don't even know if it's king. So you really have the person in charge of the land, and then at the bottom would be like the serfs or the peasants, right? The people who are working it. The tribute system is a more, we sort of look at it in terms of a bigger picture. So think of like China having the tribute system with Korea, with Vietnam. And so the tribute system would be where, you know, you protect certain areas as long as they're paying tribute. They're bringing their, you know, some sort of payment for that, whether that's in goods or services or, you know, money. So that would be the tribute system. That question of like, how do I remember all this info for the test? Yes, Jillian is killing it with the comments here. Definitely start reviewing. You got to start to sort things right now into the things that you know and the things that you really don't know. Because the next few weeks, you want to spend time reviewing the things that you don't know. And like Jillian said, you know a lot more than you think. You really do. You know a lot more than you think. Even if you're looking back on the school year and you're like, I didn't do enough. I didn't do, you know, all the work I needed to. I wish I did more. Even if that's true, you still absorbed a whole lot more. So have confidence in yourself and be really strategic right now. You know, you want to be able to like look through the AP World Ultimate Guide, you know, that we published. If you just like almost click out of the box, you'll see it come up. You know, look through the guide and start to mark things off. I know this. I don't know this. I don't remember this at all. And that's going to help you out. That's going to help you stay focused. Okay. So really just focus on the things you don't know. Okay. Okay. So I got to go. We are at the end of the hour. The ultimate guide is, let's see. You should see it if you kind of like almost scroll out. You get like a pop-up for it. But I think it's, if anyone has the link to the ultimate guide, if you could post it in this chat. I don't have it on me. But I have to go talk to 2 other teachers about a few other streams this week. I will see you guys next Monday. We'll be back Monday, 8 p.m. Eastern. That's when we're here reviewing. So if you're freaking out and you're stressing out, get here, make sure you make some time to join the live stream so you can get your questions asked. Now that we're in review, it's going to be a lot of answering your questions. And get your friends to come too. So if you guys, if you tweeted things out tonight, thank you. I really appreciate it. Spread the word. Grab your promo code in the app. If you just literally log into app.fiveable.me, you can make an account for free. And I posted a ton of videos in the skills area, all for free. Where I helped a lot of kids pass the AP World Exam. And so what I did is I recorded myself explaining all these games, all these review games that I used to use in my classroom. And so all those videos are up in there, including AP World, like fillable study guides for every unit is also in there. And so you can, so go log in, go check it out. And shout out to all of you guys for making the time to do it. So I'm going to see you guys next week. And until then, I don't know, stay fly. Peace. Stay woke.